Thank you for tuning in to the Unjiggered podcast. If you enjoy listening, please consider subscribing and giving us a rating on your podcast service of choice. Also, don't forget to like and tag us on Instagram at unjiggered_media. Thank you to everybody for listening, and now on with the show. You're listening to Unjiggered, a bartender podcast where we interview highly successful bartenders about their careers, lives, and the passion of bartending. This week on the podcast we have Spaniard. Listen as we chat about his adventures filming and bartending around the world. With this podcast we want to peel back the mask and discover just how the greats really became the greats. So sit back and enjoy.
My name is Spaniard. I am a bartender from Spain, but I currently live in Denmark. And there's a bit of a story of how I ended up in different countries till I ended up here.
Oh, fantastic. Well, we'll get to it at some point. But first of all, how are you?
I'm alive, dude.
Yeah, I haven't seen you in ages, actually. When's the last time we kind of met? I think it was still London, was it?
Well, I mean, let's talk about the last time, because that was in Rome.
Oh, it's true. That was Rome. I have pictures of you next to the Colosseum, actually.
Yeah, we were singing Pavarotti.
Yeah, eating pizza. Classic Italian things, right? Baking pasta from scratch.
The least you can do, right?
Anyway, let's dive right into it. You mentioned you're from Spain. So are you born in Spain?
Yes, I am. I was actually born in Tarragona, which is in Catalonia. And I only found out maybe just a year ago that the moment my mom had me, we just moved straight to Seville. So I basically grew up in Sevilla. And then by the age of 10, my mom said, this country sucks, weather's shit, food is horrible, let's go to London.
Yeah. Yeah, right.
And then a year later I followed. So the idea was to learn English and go back to Spain. But because I wanted to become an actor, I decided to stay a little bit longer and got into theater studies. I did it for about 7 years. And then next thing you know, you're an adult. Yeah, the rest is history, I guess.
So tell us, you said you studied to become an actor. You went to acting school. How was that?
It was good. I mean, I think I like the idea of being someone I wasn't. You know, I think that's where I had my first interest of pretending to be somebody else. Maybe because maybe I didn't like myself when I was younger. Maybe it was just interesting to get into people's minds, and I've always been interested in psychology, how people think and perceive life. But most importantly, you know, just getting lost into someone else's world, and or maybe also the rush, you know, of being in front of an audience, which, you know, in a way we kind of do when we're in front of an audience. You know, in a bar, you do put on an act, right? One way or another, we do tend to. So a little bit of acting has definitely helped in my career.
I think the way I see it, right? Like I remember once I was working and I just walked outside the bar. I had to go through the lobby of the hotel to collect something from the other side. And I just passed by some people and I've noticed how much effort they put into going out, like how well dressed they were and like the makeup and the perfume and the haircut and everything. And somehow I thought, you know, like this really means something to people, you know, the way they are investing their own private time to come and share it with us. So I think the only thing you can do is to make sure that you give them as positive as an experience as you can, right?
Absolutely.
And that's where like the acting bit probably like comes into play. The fact that you have to go to work and you have to sort of like deliver a flawless experience for guests, because ultimately they're not there to be empathetic with you. They're there because they chose to spend their time there, right? So they shouldn't be...
Yeah, absolutely. I think in relation to that, I remember explaining this to one of my colleagues where, you know, we worked in this hotel and I try to explain that everything is important from the moment you walk into those doors. And the fact that you didn't bother to check the mint could have ruined everything. And he goes, how so? I was like, well, imagine, hypothetically speaking, let's say you have this guy that's been traveling for 15 hours. Everything has been a complete disaster. Eventually he gets to this city that he has to stay for a couple of nights. Reception was great. Goes to the room. Everything was spotless, immaculately clean. Then he goes to the bar where he can finally relax. And then he just wants that drink. That's all he's thought about for the past 15 hours. I want to go to my hotel and then just have a drink. And then that's the moment where he gets the drink with this crappy, disgusting mint. Or let's say that the lime is too oxidized or there's too much sugar. Just something that just kind of goes, you know, like I could have just had a beer and everything would have been better. but I wanted to have a mojito or some other drink, and then everything was just ruined. Or maybe the way that you spoke to him put him down. Like, I don't know what your problem is, but I'm a guest. I'm here just to have a drink. It's like, no, it's fine. It's like, I've had no people today. I was just about to close down, and then you came in. It's like, do you see what I mean? Like, you always have to give them a good experience no matter what. And I'm not saying that you should think about this guy. It's just that it's a service at the end of the day. And yeah, you do, like there's always a story. I think everybody that comes into your bar has a story. And you shouldn't justify why this guy should have better service or not. I mean, you should always do your absolute best. But these are the small examples that you kind of want to give to people so they understand that, okay, that makes sense, because I wouldn't like to be in that position. I wouldn't like.
Yeah,
but,
I think that the most important skill in bartending is actually empathy. And it's such an important skill, and I think it's the basis for our work, because if you have empathy towards your guests, you want to make sure you deliver the best drink or the best service, or you just go the extra mile to deliver that experience, purely based on empathy.
I mean, there are many different ways that you can go on about this. I stopped thinking that way a while ago because, I remember there was a period where going to different bar shows, all I heard, there were so many seminars about the guest, the guest is the most important thing. It's like, I'm just so tired of listening to this. Like, of course they're important. Of course we should do our best. Of course we should deliver, top-notch quality service. But why do we keep talking? I mean, is everyone doing such a bad job that we have to talk about this year after year? And the way that I changed my mentality towards this was, I'm trying to do the best I can so I can look at myself and think, oh, I am better today than I was yesterday. Never mind the guest. I mean, the guest, of course, should have a good experience, but because, when you do trainings, when I train people, different people understand your skills in different ways. So you try to explain it you can't just have, like, I have two tools. I have two ways of explaining this. And if you don't get this, then you're not good for it. I have 1,000 ways of explaining things depending on who you are, right? Because we all come from different backgrounds. We all have different ways of seeing things. And, so there's a lot of psychology behind it. And I tend to use those tools to make them understand that, well, okay, we'll look at it this way. Okay, let's put a different example. How about if, and for me, it's always been about competing against yourself. It's never been about how important this is and that is. It's like, all of these things are important, all of these variables should be in the back of our heads at all times, but it's also important that you understand why you do it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why do you do it? Instead of putting yourself in someone else's shoes, like, well, he paid a lot of money. It's like, I don't care how much money he paid. I'm going to give him the same service as anybody else. But that's because but again, this is me, because I'm competing against myself, because I'm thinking at the end of the shift, could I have done better? I think that definitely helps me become better rather than.
Yeah, no, it makes
anyway.
absolutely sense. Yeah, it's more of an internal thing rather than getting stimulus from the outside.
Right.
So let's dive back into your background. We talked about your acting school. At what point have you started working into bars?
So let's see. So I started when I was still in school. So I was 17, and this was just a summer job, I guess, just working in a pub next door.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it was just pocket money, it's just, everyone was going out. I never borrowed money from my parents, so I've always wanted to just kind of, I was working as a paper boy when I was 15.
Delivering papers?
Yeah. I was delivering papers to Jonathan Ross and Boy George, believe it or not.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. And
at what stage did bartending become serious? Like, it's never serious, but at what stage did it become a career?
The moment I said, this is not going to get any better, you might as well enjoy what you're doing now. No, I think I remember going to a friend's bar. This girl, Rebecca. Shit, I haven't heard from her in ages. Anyway, so I went to pick her up, and I remember asking her, I was like, hey, what happened to the Asian dude that used to work in the bar? I was like, oh, he moved to Japan. I was like, yeah. It's like, yeah, he's gonna be, making cocktails. That's what he does. It's like, that's so cool. Like, you can just travel anywhere and make cocktails. I think that was the first thing that kind of hit me, And the second one would be when I was out with a friend, and he said we were supposed to go to the cinema or something, and he goes, before we go, I know a guy that makes the best martinis in town, so let's just go there for a quick one, and then we can go. And I was like, okay, sure. So we walked into the lab in Old Compton Street. First time I've gone to a proper cocktail bar, and then I saw this guy, Tim Stones. I was like, I want to be that guy. I think that was the first time that I had this impact where I thought,
this guy is cool. Yeah, I want to be doing that. Yeah.
I think this is what I want to do. I mean, it had nothing to do with the drinks, but it was just everything about it, you know? The music was great. Everyone was having a laugh. It was like a gathering of mates in school. And you have this cool guy, you know, just making jokes. Everyone's taking the piss out of each other. You know, a lot of banter. It was, you know, I thought, I don't want to leave this place. And I thought, I want to do that too. So, I mean, you know, I'm not, this is not your typical story of seeing some bartender, you know, throwing bottles in the air, going like, oh man, that's so cool. For me, it was just, like I said, you know, it's like walking into a fun place, like a fun house where you go, this is cool. This is what I want to do. But the thing is that for me, it was very difficult to get into the cocktail world because, you know, I had dreadlocks and tattoos and piercings. And at the time, it was all about, for starters, you need to have a minimum of 2 years experience. So who's going to give me 2 years experience? You know?
Yeah,
like,
I agree.
Every single ad on Gumtree.com was, you need 2 years experience. Like, well, who's going to give me those 2 years experience? So of course, you know, you need to start from the bottom, which I think everybody should for sure. And that's when I started working in Smolenski's as a barback, and then slowly, you know, going up the ladder. But yeah, it was difficult. And I'm not saying that this is the reason why, but I can tell you that the looks definitely didn't help. And that's why I guess that's why it was easier to get a job at the Big Chill bar, because everyone pretty much looked like me. You know, it's just hipsters pretty much.
Do you think things have changed in regards to that? Because you're talking about 10 years ago at this stage, aren't you?
Yeah, 15 years ago. Yeah, absolutely. Because no one had tattoos. No one had. I mean, I worked in places where if you had any type of piercing, they would tell you to take it off. And I remember guys that would just put the fishing line in, not fishing line. What is it called? The fishing thread.
Yeah, I think it's called fishing line. Yeah.
Yeah. So they would use that so it wouldn't close.
Oh, that's messed up, man. I think things have changed a lot. Like I think they're relaxing. Like things have relaxed a lot for the better. I might add. You know, I've never been a tattoo guy myself, but I've never noticed a decrease in performance based on your tattoos. So
well, I mean now they want what I was 15 years ago, which is really annoying. Because now you say, like, I got this guy, he's got tattoos and piercings, like, he's hired. I don't care how much experience, but he doesn't have 2 years experience. I don't care. He's in. And by the way, he's from London. He's in. Let's go. Let's do this.
So you're working in London. Is there anything else you're doing while you're working in bars?
Yeah. So the filming, I mean, I've always done films. I think because I did media for 2 years, and the money that I saved as a bartender, I bought myself a computer, a camera. I was filming so much crap everywhere. I started doing the bartending videos later on, once I got into, you know, in the cocktail business, because at the you know, when the internet started, there weren't that many videos online, and the very few videos online were so poor. You know, they were so bad. And luckily, I was working in a bar with some of the biggest names. I had Dre Masso and Henry Besson by my side, and they knew everybody in the business. They had great recommendations for places to go. So that's when I just thought, why not take advantage of this and start making videos of these guys, you know, real bartenders. So I thought, let's just take advantage of the people that we know, and then just tell them to make a drink and see how it goes. And I think that's when it started, you know, when you started seeing. Well, I don't want to say that I started it, but I definitely don't know anyone that was doing that at the time. So for me, it was kind of like starting a fire.
Yeah, and I think we went from a time where we had zero content online because the internet was such a new thing to a time now where internet can be a bit spammy. I think there's a lot of people who make a lot of content, which can be average at best. And I think it's very difficult nowadays to find a competitive edge because there's just so many people filming out there. In order for you to come out with content it attracts more attention, like you really have to think outside the box, right?
I mean, you also have to think about what kind of audience you're reaching out for, because, you know, you look at groups like the Tipsy Bartender and you have millions of views. And, you know, I'm not going to say anything bad about it, because I think we do need that kind of content. You know, sometimes you do need this phony, you know, happy-go-lucky kind of guy making drinks that excited you when you started in the cocktail world. You know, I remember going to some cocktail bars in London, and I had this guy making me a Sex on the Beach and some colorful cocktails, and I was just like it was just like such a wow factor, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But just because you've been in the business for 20 years, you can't just look at it now and go, well, that's crap. It's like, but look how excited you were the first time you saw Fire, even though the drink was crap. Now you look at it and you laugh at it. You know, that you can't tell me that your first strawberry margarita was bad. It wasn't. It was amazing. It was delicious.
It's still amazing. That's the thing. It still is.
You know?
No, but to touch on that, I think, because I kind of see, like, because the Tipsy Bartender appears a lot on my Facebook wall, so I kind of see a video of it every now and then. And I think it's brilliant stuff. Like, don't get me wrong, I think the drinks that he makes are horrifying, but like they all have something cool for people to watch. And if you read the comments, like 99% of the comments are like incredibly positive. Because people
love
really
it.
Enjoy the content.
People love it.
They love it, yeah.
Look, listen, I go to Vegas. I'm there for 3 days. I want to have a good time. I'm going to have a Miami Vice. Here we go. You know, like, don't spoil my time. You know, I'm having a good time. I want to have something silly and childish, and it tastes good, and I get drunk. You know, like, come on, what's not to like? You know, if after a few drinks, the bartender pours 10 shots and it looks like a rainbow, are you gonna be like, oh, mate, you know, don't do that. Don't, you know, make me on Manhattan. Stop wasting your time. No, of course not. You're gonna be like, yeah, you know, rainbow shots. Of course, come on. You know, like you're there to have a good time. So people need to calm down. Don't take your job too serious.
So going back to you, at what stage have you thought, okay, I kind of need to move out of London? Because like you've been there for like 15 years or so.
Yeah, I tried to escape a few times actually, and I always ended up going back. Well, I mean, it was a friend of mine that wanted to go to Copenhagen. We came here for a beer, and we're still here. So it's been 15 years now. Oh my God.
There must have been a very long beer.
Yeah, still going.
What differences do you find between the two cities for people who like perhaps don't know the cities very well?
Well, if you know what London is like, Copenhagen is exactly the opposite. So what is London like? London is it's a very competitive city. It's always growing. Sometimes you hate it, sometimes you love it, but there's so much going on all the time. You know, it's like going into a library and you just have no idea which book to choose because there's just so many options. Whereas Copenhagen is very limited. And, you know, a lot of countries and cities have the same issue. Sometimes when you do your traveling, your guest shifts, you kind of have to bring your own ingredients because they don't have it over there, right? And maybe in your country it's just like, that's weird because we have it all over Europe. It's like, well, this is not Europe. The same thing with tools. And that's the thing, you know, you always look at London as you guys have everything, even though it's an island away from everything, but the possibilities are just endless. Whereas here, you can't just go to a market where you can buy ingredients from all around the world like you do in London, you know, flowers, spices, and this obviously encourages bartenders to be more creative. And even though a lot of the times, you know, you pretty much get the same drink and you go, was that really worth it? I mean, you just changing the name from this to this, but you see what I'm saying. You know, it's, you know, when we first moved to Copenhagen, there was no cocktail culture. If you know, when you have a city like London where cocktails have been around since the 1800s, and then here it was only like a couple of years, then it kind of becomes like a playground. And since it's a very trendy city, you also have the opportunity to evolve. But again, when it comes to ingredients, I'm pretty much stuck with 20 fruits. I'm giving you a low number, but just so you get the idea.
Yeah, I get it, yeah.
But I think that's where creativity comes for us, because what can you make the best of the little that you have? So to give you an example, I remember going to this bar in it was in Buenos Aires, and the guys worked with only 25 bottles, and all of the cocktails were with 25 bottles, and you'll be surprised how many drinks came out of the bar. And that's kind of what you will need to work with, right? I mean, there's so much that you can do with sugar. There's so much that you can do with just one fruit, with juices. That, you know, different ways of cooking, different techniques and methods that with the same products, with the same ingredients, you can create so much.
And what about quality of life in terms like if you take work out of the equation in between the two cities?
Between
like
Copenhagen and
any difference that
London?
you can find? Yes.
Are you kidding me?
No, just it's conversational for people who don't know the two cities.
Mate, it's the exact opposite. I mean, London was spending all your time working so you can pay for your travel card.
Yeah, no, that's true. London can get quite grindy, right?
The amount of time that you spend traveling to get to work, the amount of time that you spend working so you can pay to travel, the amount of time that you spend at work versus your time off to do whatever it is that you forget about it. It's a completely different mindset as well, because it took me about an hour and a half to get to work, and it didn't bother me. An hour and a half it's fine, no worries. It takes me 5 minutes from my house to my work here by bike.
That's crazy. Just by doing that, you've gained roughly 3 hours of extra daytime.
Well, here's the thing. I'm not spending, 40% of my wages on a travel card.
Yeah.
Are you listening to this? People need to understand how
that's true.
important this is. I mean, because I remember when, because I still go back to London from time to time. And, my mum doesn't live that far away from the city. But in comparison to Copenhagen, yeah, she lives in, Farmville. But, just to walk from her house to the metro station, to the underground, it's about 20 minutes just to walk. And then you have whatever time you need in the metro. And if you think about how much money you invest from your wages just so you can do your weekly routine to get to work, it's insane. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's surreal. Yeah, you're right.
So then there comes, then comes the food. I used to work about 60 hours a week. And then you think I'm going to go home and start cooking for an hour and a half? I don't think so, mister. So
it's kebab o'clock.
Yeah, that's the thing. You end up eating not so great food or processed food. Whereas here you get to have a little bit of more time to do your cooking, right? And after I started doing some training, I started to cook in big bulks in London, that is. So you had everything in Tupperware, so that way you can just go home and then you just put your crap in the microwave and there you go. But yeah, I think London it's like an airport, Everything happens.
People come, people go.
People come and go, people come and go, and you don't know if you're going to see someone again. This goes for everything. It's the same with friendship. Friends come and go. You have a great friend for about 2 years, and he goes, "Hey, so I'm moving to Singapore." It's like, you piece of what? Why?
Would you like to talk to us about some of the defining career steps that you had in Copenhagen?
Well, let's see. I mean, I've worked in a lot of bars in Copenhagen, but I've always been a bartender. I've never wanted to be a manager.
And why is it so?
Because I liked my job. I liked bartending. I don't know. I guess you can't really criticize the unknown until you do it, right? But I liked being behind the bar. I didn't like the idea of being in the office and emails and different types of responsibility, But
yeah, I think they're different jobs. Like, but managing a bar and bartending are two different jobs, and the fact that one comes after the other doesn't necessarily mean that what should be the natural progression, right?
Yeah, I mean, there are managers and there are managers. I think the first managing job that I took, I said to myself, I can't believe that I didn't do this any sooner. But it also depends on where you work, because I've also spent a lot of time, I've wasted a lot of time. I could even say years not developing as a bartender, just kind of been stuck, which is very sad because, it could be 3 or 4 years where I just didn't do anything. I didn't, there was nothing challenging. I wasn't challenging myself. I wasn't growing in any way. I wasn't traveling and being motivated with anything that I did. But then when you're a manager, you're kind of responsible for that, right? And the first managing job that I took, I had that responsibility, making sure that the guys learned, that they, that I did trainings for them. I could do anything I wanted in the menu. Whereas as a bartender, you again, this depends on, I'm talking about personal experience, but your input on the menu is almost zero because someone else was taking care of it. So then you look at yourself and you think, I'm making someone else's drinks. I'm basically just coming in, doing my job, but I'm not really learning. Well, it's not that I'm not learning. I'm not creating anything of my own because you don't have that free hand in a way. And
I see.
And then once I became a manager, then I thought, this is incredible because now I can do whatever I want in a good way. Even teaching the guys kind of put me back on the spot. You're like, okay, now I need to start reading as well because you need to know what you're talking about as well. You can't just give them homework and then they come back and say, okay, so this is what I know about fermentation and this is what I know about. You're like, yeah, you're right. You can't do that. So that also helps you to get back on track as well. So it definitely helped me to start learning again in a way because I was stuck for so many years that being a manager was actually one of the greatest things that's ever happened to me.
So what recommendation would you give to someone who feels perhaps in the same situation where you felt at, like meaning that you feel like you're not improving? Because it happens a lot in our industry, right? Where you reach the point where you think, I need to do more, right?
Mate, you have no idea how many times I wanted to quit. The amount of times that I just thought, is this the best that I can do? Can I do any better than this? I mean, serving drinks, is that the best I can do? But then you have to look at it, look at the whole picture. You're not just making drinks. I think making drinks is the bonus. The
fun part.
The part where you can relax. Because one thing is making drinks and another thing is bartending.
Yeah, how would you differentiate the two?
Making drinks is making drinks. I can hire you and say, listen, I need you to be at the arena by 7 o'clock. You're going to start making drinks from 8 till 10. Here are the specs. You're basically like a singer that gets given a microphone, sing a song. But even the singers have to come in and do some rehearsals. The rehearsals would be you learning your specs, right, before you come in. But bartending is a completely different story because bartending is setting up, is dealing with guests, is well, let's just talk about dealing with guests. That's a lot, because making drinks, am I making drinks in the corner? Am I making drinks in the dispense bar where I don't have to deal with guests? Or am I bartending? Does that make sense? Because
it does. There's a huge difference there.
Because I think a lot of bartenders love to be in the dispense bar, but there's so much more to. I mean, even just making drinks in front of a guest is already a completely different ball game than being in a dispense bar. Sometimes we can have very difficult people to deal with. Some people are very pleasant. There's a lot of psychology behind it.
Agreed. No. Of course. It's a different thing.
I've worked in pubs where, I've had hooligans that I had to deal with, and I was this skinny guy, with no power whatsoever, with a really low voice, like, guys, can you please just drink up because my boss is, and that's also part of the job, giving people recommendations, what's new for the day, concerts that we should know about, any theme parks, it's just so much information that you need to know. That just making drinks that's the bonus, that's when you can just relax and not think about everything else.
So going back to your career, you mentioned that you moved to Copenhagen and you're bartending there. At some point, I am assuming that based on our previous conversations that you wanted to open a bar. Would you like to talk to us about that?
Well, I didn't want to open up a bar. My friend did.
Okay.
He asked, yeah. Yeah, he always wanted to open up a bar in Barcelona. So, we started talking a bit more here and there. And it just became more of a project rather than, I didn't think of it as I'm moving back to Spain. It was more of a, I'm going to open up a business in Spain kind of thing. And I was traveling back and forth, was going to Barcelona, back to Copenhagen, maybe once a week. But nobody knew. Nobody knew that I was going to Barcelona. And that was the time that I took the opportunity to, just go there and look for locations and work on the business plan, get to know the city, get to know the crowd, get to know the people in the industry, etc., etc. And then eventually we found a spot that everybody was very reluctant to go forward with the business because, so we had a business plan that we worked for a long time. And when we found this spot, the first thing I thought was, well, this concept is not going to work. Not here. It's just too small. And my business partner said, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. We'll think of something. I was thinking, you think of something. And I remember just taking a stroll down the street. And I thought, hey, I have an idea. How about we do this? And he goes, you see? I told you, man. I told you. It's like that was a lucky fluke, Like I definitely wouldn't have thought about anyway. So I had this idea and I thought, okay, let's do it. So then we went to speak to the owners and we said, okay, so we're very much interested in your location. What's the deal? And they said, this is how much we're selling it for. If you want to come back tomorrow and we settle down with a payment, you'll have the keys by tomorrow. And we're like, sweet. Now, one of those stories when you think it's too good to be true?
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't too good to be true. I mean, we were buying a shithole, And the price was very cheap. And I knew that they were very desperate. So the problem was that the next day, he spoke to his other business partner. Apparently there were two, which we didn't know. And then he said, oh, listen, unfortunately, the price is this, as opposed to what I told you yesterday. And we said, but you told us yesterday it was that much. Yeah, I know, but I spoke to my business partner and then I just got the wrong figures. So everyone's looking at each other going, well, this is bullshit. I mean, we're not going to buy it, are we? But I was the only one who said, no, we need to buy it because it's still cheap as hell. Yeah, but it's the principle. We can't just forget about the principle. Like, look, it's just this much more. Forget about it. We have the place, then we can do whatever we want. Screw these guys. They're just desperate. They're just trying to see if they can get a little bit more. Anyway, then we get a phone call saying, oh, and by the way, there's a French guy coming over. And if you want the place before him, then, we don't know if he might buy it, but he's coming over around 12 o'clock, just to let you know. It's like, okay, now he's playing mind games. Now they want us to
make a decision in like 2 hours. Or so, yeah.
Well, what about if we give you €1,000 extra and then, come on, like, what are you doing? What French guy? There's no French guy, Anyway, long story short, fast forward about 2 weeks, we ended up, settling down and saying, listen, we're interested. Cut the crap with the French people. We're gonna buy the place, and then everything was running smoothly. So I go back to Copenhagen, and now I start telling everybody, hey, I'm moving to Barcelona to open up this bar, and blah, blah, blah. I told my roommate that I was moving out. I was working at 2 different bars at the time. I told them that I was leaving. I had a goodbye party. And then I get a phone call from my partner saying, hey, I just got this message from a lawyer. I'm like, oh no. So I read the email, and it says that they would have to renew the contract within a year, which means that, if the building board decides to not have a bar,
then ciao.
Then that's it. Then we're out. It was just too risky to say yes. So imagine that, Imagine saying goodbye to everybody, finally being in a position where you can say, oh, this is it.
I'm doing this.
I'm doing this. I'm moving, and this is gonna happen, and everything's set. We're gonna get the keys, and then they say, no, you're not going anywhere, mate. So talk to your landlord, talk to your bosses, and see if you can get your job back. Which I didn't. I actually ended up going to Japan for the second time just to get away from everything and everyone, and I think it was very healthy of me to do that. But yeah.
So that must have been quite heartbreaking. But how long did you spend in Japan to refresh yourself?
I think it was almost a month.
And would you like to talk to us about what you did when you were there?
What didn't I do, Michele? No, to be honest, I mean, the second time I was there, I was just taking it easy. I knew places already from the first visit.
So when did you film the surf video? Was it the first time or second time?
That was the first year. The first year was because I wanted to film Japanese bartenders. That was my last request on my bucket list.
So how was that? How did you go about filming Japanese bartenders? Because for someone to grab a camera, go to Japan and start filming random bartender dudes, I mean, there's a bit of thought process behind it, right?
Definitely random bartenders, and I'll get into that in a second. But it was always my dream to go to Japan. That's number one. And why Japanese bartenders? I don't know. I think I just had this fascination of, if this is how they make katanas, how in the world do they make cocktails? Because nobody knew anything about it, right? There was absolutely nothing out there, nothing. But I know what they are. I know a little bit about their culture. So I thought,
how did you go about finding bars? You just walked around?
So the first person I spoke to Marian, and I said, "Do you know
Marian
anyone?"
Becker, that is, right?
Do you know any other Marians?
No, just for the sake of clarity, yes.
Yeah, I'm kidding. So I asked him, "Do you know anyone in Japan?" And then he said, "Yeah, I know this guy." And then he gave me he gave me his name. I got in contact with him, and the most important thing was that he could speak English, because the first time I went to Japan, apart from Bueno, nobody speaks English. Now they're good. Now they can speak it, but anyway, my idea was, you just need to know one bartender. You go film them. You ask them, what do you recommend after this? And then you go to the next bar, and then you do the same thing. So I didn't have a list. It was like, I just need to know one guy. And then from that, I just kind of root it down. And the thing is that he wasn't even living in Tokyo anymore. When I got in contact with him, it's like, I don't live in Tokyo anymore. It's like, where do you live? It's like, Osaka. It's like, okay, I'm coming to Osaka. And then we went to Kyoto. And so that's part of the reason why we traveled a little bit around Japan. It was good. It's really, an experience for sure. It's just a shame that it's changed a lot from one year to the next, because I think once they opened the borders, we'll put it this way, the first year that we were there, we didn't see a single Westerner. I mean, we must have seen maybe 3 or 4 within 3 weeks.
Okay.
And then the next year, there were Westerners in every street, honestly. So things change.
I can see what you mean.
Anyway, that's just...
At what stage, what was your first management job?
That was at MASH, actually. Well, no, that's not true. My first managing job was in Ibiza when I was 21. I mean, the boss that I had, he was just a beast.
Really?
I don't even know if he's still alive. Let's just put it that way.
Okay, yeah. Well, living in Ibiza, probably.
Complete freaking maniac. Eyes like plates, no sleep every day. I don't know.
So let's talk about your experience in MASH. So how was that?
It was amazing, because when I was in Japan the second time, like I said, I didn't want to see anybody that I knew. I didn't want to know anything about anything. I just wanted to spend some time alone. And I got a phone call from a friend, and he said, "Hey, I'm opening up this new restaurant. I was wondering if you could help me out." And I said, when I get back home, man, because right now I definitely don't want to, I don't want to talk about business. I don't want to. And he goes, yeah, no problem. So when I went back to Copenhagen, we met, we sat down, and he goes, right, so you can do whatever you want, whatever spirits you need, whatever music you like, blah, 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 whatever team you like, this and that, salary, we'll discuss it. It's like, whoa, what's happening? I didn't come here for an interview. I thought I came here to help you out. And he's like, nah, are you interested? It's like, Jesus, man, can you just give me a minute? And I thought, well, this sounds too good to be true. And, I don't have a job really, so maybe I should take the job. And I had, so much freedom, and I could just basically do whatever I wanted in a good way. I could do my weekly trainings. I could choose my team. When it comes to the menu, I could be as creative as I wanted. And it was just good. And, also we had such a good team all around, from reception to the kitchen we had a great general manager, and we just had a good time. We were busy as hell, I'll tell you that. And it was hard work, but it was worth it. I think, with a good team and everything else, it was a fun ride for sure.
How long have you worked at MASH, and what kind of menu did you put in place?
So I was there for about 4 years, and I was going to say I'd like to reinvent myself, but I don't think that's true, because I don't know how you feel about this, but let's say that you go to an art school. You need to learn and need to know about different artists and different styles before you start having your own style, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
In other words, if you, as a bartender, you learn your classics until you find your own style, like artists would say, until we found our sound. You listen to a song that you've never heard from the Red Hot, but it's the Red Hot.
Indeed, yeah.
And I think, that's a very important quality that we should maybe achieve. I say maybe because sometimes you could spend your entire life just making classics. And that's fine, and that's absolutely fine. But anyway, I'm just saying that I've always changed. I never had my thing. I never had my sound. I just kind of adapted into a genre, I studied it, I understood it, but I don't think you can look at one of my drinks and say, that's definitely from Spaniard. Like right now, where I work, we have 3 different bars, and we have 3 different concepts. Mm-hmm. They have nothing to do with each other. Mm-hmm. And it's also understanding of what makes sense. So
I agree. So why did you, I think, like, to just close this specific topic, I think that it's very difficult to achieve such a distinct style if you run multiple outlets. I agree with you on that. But I think you have certainly achieved a certain style with your videos, like with your bartending videos. Like, because 90% of the times, if it's one of your videos, I can tell it's your video.
Well, why do you think so?
Because I think that you've got this unique element. Like, first of all, you come from a bartending background, and you've had the chance to work with great bartenders that have certain techniques. So you can see that there is a very bartending technical element into the videos that you take. So there are certain moves, certain flips, or certain ways that the people pour that you just know how to catch. But I think what defines you is that you've got these elements of like very, very cool techniques and like very serious bartending topics, but broken down and made fun. Because a lot of the times your videos are just fun to watch. Do you know what I mean?
But that's the thing, is that bartending is fun. So I'm not trying to be funny. I can understand why people would think that I am trying to be funny, but believe you me, sometimes when I'm doing my editing, and sometimes when I am trying to be funny, it's possibly the sequences that you will never see, because you can see that I'm trying to be funny, and it's just a complete disaster. But when I'm trying to just show what, I don't know how to explain it, because the thought process behind it is none. It's it's zero. It's more a lot of the times it's just being natural and trying to think about what would you like to see, like what would be something that would interest you in this topic and in this world and in the bartending world. There's not that much thought process for that. I'm gonna make sure that the next video is gonna be hilarious, because then it's gonna be I can see it, at least with myself, that it's just not gonna be.
It's not genuine, right?
Yeah, I mean, and the videos that I'm coming up with nowadays, I mean, the next one that will come out soon, hopefully, they're just getting more and more ridiculous. But as long as I'm still adding that element of excitement of, I wonder what he's gonna do next, rather than, check out the new bartending video from so-and-so person, I'm adding elements of bartending in something that you wouldn't never say this is a bartending video. You know,
that's cool.
It's becoming more of a, now it's just a bartender making a video rather than a bartending video.
I can't wait to see that.
Yeah.
Cool. So let's move to the last step of your career. Like after 4 years at MASH, what made you decide to move to the next step where you are now? So after leaving MASH.
Well, it wasn't really, well, I mean, working for 4 years, you kind of want to look for something new, something different.
Yeah, I think 4 years is the limit in today's hospitality market, because I think after 4 years, you feel like you've given a lot to the place, but you kind of like starting to feel stale. So I think 4 years is a good spot. So tell us about your current job. Like, where do you work and what do you do?
So it's a five-star hotel in the center of Copenhagen, and it's a boutique hotel by this very famous theme park, which is Tivoli. So it's a great place to stay, because imagine, you know, opening your doors, your windows, and there's a theme park right in front of you. I mean, that's just insane. For me, it's just once you work there, it's just, you're just so used to it. But it still blows my mind that you're in the center of, you know, you take a train from the airport, takes you straight to the center, and in front of you, you have your hotel. So you just have to cross the road, go into your room, open your windows, and there's a theme park in front of you. That's crazy, man.
Only Copenhagen can do that, I think. There's like no other
that's
cities
insane.
in the world. Yeah, it's absolutely mental. Plus Tivoli is such an awesome theme park.
You just take it for granted sometimes, you know. I mean, it's almost like it's like a fairy tale, you know, in a way, because it's almost unreal that you can just take a train, take a plane from Stansted straight to Copenhagen, and within 2 hours, you open your windows and there's a theme park in front of you with a peacock shouting at your ear. Ah! Oh my God, Michele.
Awesome.
You're missing out.
When
are you coming?
I'll come over soon as this pandemic is over. Cool. I think we're approaching the end of this. A couple of last questions I would like to ask you. So first of all, you mentioned that the importance of having a business plan and things like that before when opening a bar and due diligence. If to anyone who wants to open their own bar, what recommendations would you give?
Well, you definitely need to make sure that you do your research and that you have a very strong, solid business plan. I mean, I've done about 3 or 4 business plans, and you know, there is so many variables that we don't think about. I think it definitely helped working in different bars or restaurants with a bar and take different responsibilities, so you get to know what goes, you know, behind the scenes and how much more you need to know and understand. Just do your research, maybe find someone who's done it already and get some tips, because it's not that fun, to be honest. And just make sure that you have everything in line, because it's a business at the end of the day. I think a lot of bartenders want to open up a bar because they don't see what's behind those doors, you know, all this accounting and I think you also need to be, you know, climbing up the ladder a little bit, you know, when you become a manager or a general manager, that you get to know a little bit more about this side of the spectrum, right?
Yeah, the paper side, which is often underrated, right? While it's actually crucial.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, like, I mean, how much do you know about salaries? You know, if you could say, like, I know about salaries. I'm a manager. I approve salaries. Like, yeah, but what do you know about salaries? What do you know about people's rights? And what do you know about? There's just so many elements in so many different corners that, again, you know, it's a business. So maybe have an extra hand and make sure that you have your own accountant, so he takes care of the money. Maybe have an extra hand for for a carpenter. So you don't have to go through this stress, and you don't have to, you know, because, you know, some people don't have the opportunity to open up a bar, and when they do, they only have that one chance. So it's like, okay, so here's our million, let's do this, and maybe there's like 30% of what goes into the business that you just have no idea what you're doing, and then you end up spending that money on your failures, you know. So maybe talk to someone that's already been in the business that can give you a little bit of a little bit of a guideline, because it's not as easy as it's not as romantic as you may think.
I agree. Awesome. And last question we asked to everyone. So if you could choose your last drink, what would that be?
My last drink?
Yep.
Are you making it for me?
I can if you want me to.
Well, if you make it for me, I don't care what you make.
It can be anything. So it's not about the drink. It's about who makes it for you.
I think so, man. I think it's definitely about the company, you know. A glass of I don't know. How much time do I have with you?
Well, it's your last drink, so I can give you an hour or so.
Okay, so I can get a punch.
Yeah, cool. Like a punch bowl.
Just to spend as long as I can with you, yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Cool, Spaniard. Thank you so much for the time.
It's been an
awesome to chat to you.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you very much.
We hope you enjoyed our interview with Spaniard. We are Unjiggered_media on Instagram, and you can follow our personal accounts at mmariotti89 for Michele, Alex J. Murphy for myself, and Adrian Bessa for Adrian. Thank you for listening.